Well, the U.S. military is now being reshaped in the vein of the Reagan era, according to Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. He gave a speech in California over the weekend and laid out this massive military expansion vision. He's calling it peace through strength. Again, that's the sort of common marketing term that all administrations use. My son this weekend was talking about, well, you know, under another administration, probably there wouldn't be waging war. I'm like, honey, this has happened under every administration, at least since Reagan and before. I mean, I only wanted to lay out like what you can list on your hands. So let's go ahead and do that. Here is Secretary Hegseth's romanticizing of the Reagan era military expansion. Watch.
We still talk about the Reagan buildup. And my kids and yours will someday talk about the Trump buildup. President Reagan and his team inherited a military worn down from their generation's endless war in Vietnam. And they took the lessons of that war to heart. This is why he was so deliberate in how he used the joint force.
Okay. Trump buildup, he says. He wants the next generation to romanticize this military expansion. The good old days is what he's hoping he's doing right now. But deliberate. He says that Reagan was very deliberate when he used the military. Okay, let's just review those deliberate military actions. Let's take a look. In Lebanon, this was one of the bloodiest missions that the U.S. military has ever seen. The U.S. attacked Lebanon because Israel wanted to, because they were buds. So we did it. Not only was it a failure, it got 241 service members killed in a single day. The U.S. has never suffered a mass casualty event like that in any mission since. Before that, the deadliest day before that was Iwo Jima. So this is what we're saying was super awesome, these military interventions. Okay. I don't agree with that, but maybe someone can make the point. At the same time was Grenada. The U.S. did this just days after that military barracks bombing, likely to distract from that horrendous event. They made a ground invasion with overwhelming firepower to thwart another Cuba-like Soviet ally. The UN condemned it as an illegal invasion. Let's move on. At the same time, there were wars in Central America, including Iran-Contra, which had the U.S. selling weapons to Iran to fund the drug war. Do we have that one? The next one? Central America. Yes, that one. Thank you. Okay, Iran-Contra, right, which had the U.S. selling weapons to Iran to fund the drug war. Afghanistan was after that, also a part of Reagan's legacy. We armed the Mujahideen, which would eventually become al-Qaeda. So they were someone we were allied with in Afghanistan, and then we made them our enemy when the Bush administration decided to. Now, we should have, from that era, known that it's almost impossible to win a war in Afghanistan with the mountainous regions and the way that the factions are laid out. That didn't teach us anything. We went ahead and did that anyway. Libya. Reagan also ordered strikes on Tripoli and Benghazi, killing dozens, including Gaddafi's young adopted daughter. So I ask you, is this the military record we are being asked to romanticize and worship and then sign off on emulating? Hegseth said that the Reagan years followed the Weinberger Doctrine, which specifies that combat forces are only to be used when the U.S. vital interests are involved. Now, I just threw a long list at you. Did any of those seem like those were U.S. vital interests? Would you like to ring in on that? Those wars I just went over?
Libya, no. Afghanistan, no. Central America, Lebanon, Grenada, no, of course not.
Okay.
No, you forgot, there's
Well,
also
you're saying
Panama.
no.
Yeah, okay, but go ahead.
Right. I did say Central America. So, I mean,
Yeah.
there was a lot, right? This was a very simplistic summary of the Reagan years. So I'm not sure that we want to go back and do that. And who is he selling this to? Joining us to discuss is Ryan Grimm, the co-founder of Drop Site News. You guys are killing it over there with
Thank
your
you.
coverage, breaking down war lie after war lie after war lie. If you're not following Ryan Grimm on X, you are missing out. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of the Secretary's new vision and this emulation of the Reagan era? Are you excited?
Well, the emulation of the Reagan era, you could maybe set that aside. But if you are, let's say, one of the Venezuela war hawks, and you are like, let's say, a Marco Rubio, and you've been positioning U.S. military assets off the coast of Venezuela, you've been making every argument you possibly can inside the administration, for regime change and for installing this Nobel Peace Prize winner as the new head of the government of Venezuela. I think you probably hated this speech. It was such an odd moment to deliver it when, half or more than half of his administration is heavily and publicly, vociferously engaged in the very thing that he says they're not going to do anymore. So that part of it I thought was maybe the most useful in this moment.
Hegseth.
Like the rest is kind of theoretical, like the Reagan and like, I think what does he know about? I think that's in the realm of just saying stuff.
Right.
But like saying you don't want to do nation building and you don't want to do regime change wars that are not in the American interest. It's like, have you talked to your buddy, the Secretary of State over here?
Right. You know what's going on in Venezuela?
Pretty sure that's what he wants to do.
Right.
And it said so publicly.
Cuba, Colombia, Venezuela, kicking China out. It's maybe about the oil, but it's really not. It's about Chinese influence in our hemisphere. That's where, So
we just went in and intervened in the election in Honduras. We didn't do it militarily. Just went in with a bunch of threats and, successfully swayed the votes. Swung the vote. So I don't know how that fits in either.
When you talk about vital interests, so as Natali just pointed out, he talks about vital interests, right? And whether it's Latin America or other spots, looking at the Weinberger doctrine, we're not going to intervene, So when he talks about that with Grenada, Central America, anything during the Reagan years, do those rise to the level of any sort of vital national interest? Like what is Libya? How is Libya troubling us? How is Lebanon troubling us in the 1980s?
A side point here, but what I've heard is that inside the White House, whenever they're getting to the cusp of getting Trump to agree to some type of regime change operation in Venezuela, he will bring up Libya, and he'll be like, "Okay, how do you not make this like Libya?" And and they don't have a good answer for that, and that must be such an odd moment, for the kind of blob type foreign policy folks who are like, "Wait a minute. You think Libya was bad?"
Right.
It's like, I mean,
their brain doesn't work that way.
Right. Like 99% of people in the world would look at Libya, and to Trump's credit, he's a normal person and he's as unique as they come as a figure. But when it comes to like normal ideas like that, he's like, yeah, that was bad. Broke the country up. It's a giant mess. It's violent. It's still at war. You can't go there. It's bad. So he agrees with the public on that one. But in Washington, they're like, Libya, that was fine.
That was fine. They were moving towards energy independence, sort of, in many ways doing our bidding. We're happy to sort of give up any kind of nuclear program, whatever. But no, we can't have you have nuclear energy independence. We'll just break up your country and then, bayonet you, in the rear end and kill your leaders. That's what we'll do. If you've been seriously injured, your case could be worth millions, and you should know exactly what your rights are. That's why I want to tell you about Morgan & Morgan. They're America's largest injury law firm with over 1,000 attorneys working in all 50 states. And unlike a lot of firms that settle quickly, Morgan & Morgan doesn't take lowball offers from insurance companies. Just in the past few months, they won $12 million in Florida when the insurance company offered only $350,000. And in New York, they secured $6.8 million on a case where the offer was just $275,000. And the best part? It's absolutely free unless you win. Insurance companies try to pay out as little as possible. Morgan & Morgan fights to get you more if you become their client. It only takes a few minutes to see if you have a case, and you can do it right from your phone. It's that easy. You can visit forthepeople.com/redacted, or you can click the link in the description to get started.
But I want to ask you this, because Trump gave the speech in the Middle East and in Saudi Arabia earlier this year and said something very similar. We're not interested in regime change. We're going to mind our own business. Eyes are on our own paper. But then time after time, that's not what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So what do we make of the fact that these platitudes are encouraging, but the actions are antithetical to what they're telling us?
Well, it's always been that way. There's never really been a matchup between, American rhetoric and American foreign policy. I think we just get different kinds of mismatches throughout the years. The thing that they seem to be doing now is redefining what we mean by America when we say America first. Like people like Hegseth have been clear that they consider America to include the Americas. You know, everything in North America, everything in Central America, and everything in South America. Like, so even as people like Hegseth acknowledge that U.S. Full-on hegemony is it if not over, at least the end. You can see the end from here. What they're going to do is retrench back to the Americas, and they'll try to call that America first. We'll see if their base goes along with that definition of it, because ironically it's the American intervention in all of these other countries that has produced the migrant crisis that they hate so much. And Venezuela in particular, like Venezuela is like they're the ones that were Tren de Aragua, they're taking over the apartment buildings and Colorado, they're the gangsters. So the idea that you're going to then make it a worse place for people to live, probably clashes with the kind of impulses of the base. But we'll see how much that matters.
So he's sort of quietly admitting something here too. Whenever I hear someone like praising the Reagan era, it's a lot of arming of the people that we now fight 20 years later, right? It's the Mujahideen, right, in Afghanistan. It's let's create
Gaddafi.
Let's create Al Qaeda. Whatever. I mean, it's like 20 years later, we're going to be fighting these people.
Well, that's what we're doing in Syria.
Right. So when I hear this, like when we're looking at what's going on right now with the arming of a lot of these through the CIA facilitation of arming these individuals in Venezuela and Colombia. I mean, the CIA is intimately involved in this. We know that now. We're calling it out. But 20 years from now, we're going to probably look back on and be like, hey, we were there setting this all up again, just like the Mujahideen.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think that hearkening to the Reagan era might also be a way of it's kind of a compromise with one of the major kind of pieces of the American political economy, the military industrial complex, to say like, look at the Reagan era, peace through strength doesn't have to mean, and they're calling the NDAA, that's their slogan, peace through strength, doesn't have to mean that we don't keep shoveling money to Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and all the other weapons makers. Like when we say America first, don't worry. We're still going to fund all of the different weapons purchases and everything else that makes up this $1 trillion annual budget. And because Reagan did that, and we're going to do that. But we'll just, not do, long-term occupations, perhaps.
Right.
But that's
fund it all. Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at what is in the next budget, which Marjorie Taylor Greene says she will vote against because it does, in fact, facilitate forever wars. $400 million for Ukraine, $500 million for Israeli missile defense, $80 million for anti-U.S. anti-tunnel cooperation. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on. $357 million for the government of Iraq, Syrian militia, Kurdish, Lebanon. It's ridiculous. So obviously this speech about military expansion comes at an opportune time when he wants to pass this budget, right?
Right. So trust us. We're not going to do the things you don't like, but we do need this money, and but we promise it won't be for those terrible things like nation building. But you're right. Like then it clashes with, aren't you trying to do that in Venezuela? Like right now, as we speak, and aren't you like building a whole crypto nation on the beaches of Gaza? Like isn't that your whole? You're trying to like take that over and give it to the Ellisons or whoever, and turn that thing into like, so there, I think you're at, I mean, I think the American people's trust in these adventures is generally pretty low, except in, rare moments. But it's at a pretty low point right now. I think there are probably enough Republicans retiring that they can, ram this through that way.
Okay. So these people don't have to worry about the recourse later in their own districts.
Right. They have different constituencies that they'll be reporting to in their retirement.
Right.
And their voters back home.
Exactly. I want to ask you about...
Still report to God.
Well, these tough questions that you're asking, that we're talking about here, are the kinds of questions that I don't think we're going to start to see in the press room at the Pentagon anymore. Obviously, we've gone through... This is something you've been covering deeply, which is what's happening in the press room now at the Pentagon. And now you've got like a lot of, different social media influencers, and I'm not saying like they're all bad or anything like that, but I'm just saying it seems like we're in a weird new era now with Pentagon reporting, or at least trying to get some answers. Not that the last crew was good. I'm not like praising CNN or NBC or any of these other clowns either, but what's going on there?
Right. What makes me angriest about it is that they make me defend the old guard. Like,
right.
Who were awful.
Oh my God.
It's like, how are you making me miss those guys? But this started, if you look at the timeline, right after that September 2nd strike. So there's this strike, and then there was that later strike where they apparently ordered all the video of it to be destroyed. And then you got the two guys hanging off the boat, and they get, according to Hegseth, Bradley orders them to be killed, which is just amazing how Hegseth just keeps repeating that it was Bradley that gave the order, but he totally supports that order that guy gave. He's right over there, Bradley. He's the one that did it, not me, but I totally support it 100%. But go get him. So right after that is when all of this starts to happen. This, like, we don't want the press hanging around outside of the secretary's office anymore. We don't want them to be able to talk to anybody who they're not authorized to speak to. They can speak to the spokesperson when the spokesperson wants to speak with them. Because we saw that one of the complaints from the spokesperson was that at all hours of the day, reporters were knocking on her office door and then coming in and asking questions. And they're like, this has to stop. Like, that was literally one of their chief complaints about the previous press corps, that they would knock on literally the press secretary's door and then ask her questions. And so it was right at this time that they begin to cover up this second strike scandal, that they then create these new conditions and require the journalists to sign them. And just journalists in general just are never signing conditions like that. They're just not going to do it. Like, if you're going to cover the convention and they say you can't go past locked doors, it's okay. All right, fine. Maybe I'll sign that. But like, signing away who you're allowed to speak to,
right?
Never.
This is what we criticize. This is what we criticize. North Korea or China, or heck, try to cover Russia, or say that this is what Russia is doing or something like that. So, but we're doing it inside of our own Pentagon. Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess we'll see how this unfolds. Like, not to say that they're all bad. I mean, there's some good people in that room, of course.
And maybe they'll turn great. Maybe these will be like the Woodward and Bernsteins of our day, and maybe this bullying will like kind of inspire them to like prove us all wrong and go break the rules and break some news. Like, talk to people you're not supposed to talk to, get the secrets and publish them.
Well, I hope they're not like Bob Woodward, though, because then that would mean you were a CIA asset, and then that means
the old one.
You're, yeah, exactly.
And maybe the one at the time. Who knows?
Yeah. Ryan, great to see you. Thank you so much for this. Really appreciate you helping us break this down. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and subscribe to their newsletter. Dropsite News has a great newsletter as well. So follow them. We really appreciate you.
Thanks, Ryan.
See you later.